Hey guys, Dan the Frame Man here, and in today's video I want to talk to you about selecting the proper mats for your artwork. When considering what mat to choose, one of the first things you want to think about is it a conservation grade mat or is it just a regular mat? You want to make sure you're choosing at least an acid-free, but also something that is more of a high-end conservation mat. This will protect your artwork for years to come. The regular mats, the bevels tend to brown over time, and then the acid in the mat board also can damage your print. You may not notice it right off, but it's something that you would see years down the road. Whereas the acid-free mats will preserve your artwork, your prints, your original paintings for many years. The thing is, if you're going to spend a little bit of money to have something framed properly, I would highly recommend that you go with acid-free mats or acid-free, lignin-free, conservation-grade mat board. So today we're going to kind of talk about how to select the right colors for your print. In this case, we have a print of a bison. This was taken in North Dakota. I was out there in late September and captured this photo in the early fall. I loved how the bison was set against the fall colors in this tree here. But anyways, when selecting a mat, you want to take into consideration several things. Some people like to consider the environment, the room that it's going to be displayed in. They like to look at the wall color, they like to look at the furniture colors, and other pieces of artwork that are already hanging on their walls. That's an okay way to do it, but I kind of go by the idea of you chose this print because you like the print. Instead of thinking about the room that it's going into, why not choose the colors based on the colors that are already in the print? That's usually the best way to go. You'll be much more happy with the end result, and it will fit into a place in your home anyways. If you already selected the print based on the colors that are in the print and how those colors are going to fit into your room, then selecting colors for your room and the print probably would be a good option. But if you bought the print simply because you liked the print, you liked the image, you liked the scene, you don't want to go and put colors that may not really go with the artwork. Otherwise, you'll just notice the matting and the framing, and kind of the artwork becomes second rate compared to the matting and framing. I personally like to go with a double mat instead of a single mat for a couple of reasons. The double mat allows you to have more color choices. You can even go for a triple mat, quadruple mat, whatever you want to do. You can add as many colors as you want, but many times a double mat is sufficient. The other advantage to a double mat is it gives extra space between the glass and your print. The purpose of a mat isn't just decorative, it's also to protect your artwork from the glass and from moisture that may get in there if it condensate. So you want to kind of create the space where the glass is lifted up off of your artwork. So the mat serves two purposes. It's decorative, but it is also used to protect your work and keep the glass from sitting directly on your artwork. So let's get started. What I like to do is I like to look at the shadow colors. There's a lot of different colors. You've got some really deep browns here on the bison. You've also got some nice warm browns here on his face, around the legs. You also have some cool brown shadows in the background here behind the trees, and then on the ground here there's also some more kind of a cool brown shadow. So I would be drawn to kind of more of these cool or warm shadows when selecting my bottom mat. For a top mat, you want to look kind of at the neutral colors throughout or the highlights. What you could go with is like in the grasses here, there's some nice warm light that's kind of soft. You also have some really bright light right here on the leaves. They're a nice bright yellow. I would not recommend doing a yellow mat, as that would just draw attention away from the artwork and to the mat. But there's also some nice light right here on the bison's back and right across here. And If I was selecting a mat for this, I would try to go more with these nice bright highlights myself. So let's see here, let's get started. So we'll start with some of the browns. So this is kind of a nice cool brown. It's not too warm. You can see it works with this shadow here. It also works nicely with the shadow here in the grass, and it works nicely with these tree branches on this tree that's behind the bison. This is a nice choice for a bottom mat. You could also use it as a single mat. You'll notice as I put these colors down that they bring out different colors that are in the artwork. Selecting the right color can also be used to help move the eye around in the artwork. So in this case, this warm kind of reddish brown color, it brings out some of the shadows on the bison's face here and also on his leg. Not as much in the grass. If you look, there are some of those color tones there in the grass, and some back here in the tree, but those are much lighter and softer. But in this case, I think, this color is really nice with some of these mid-tones here and then the shadows on his face. And that could be another nice option for a single mat or as a bottom mat. Another color somebody might want to try is, this is called bay leaf. And it's kind of a yellowish brown, kind of with some green tones in it. It actually doesn't look too bad on this piece. This kind of works nicely with the grasses, some of the grasses in the background, and sometimes by going with a nice mid-tone color instead of a shadow color, you actually let the bison, the shadows and stuff come out on his own as well. So those are three options. I mean, we can look at a few others. You could always try a green. There's some green in there, but finding the right green could be a little tricky. I tend to like to go with the warm colors myself, but you can see how this kind of isn't too bad either. It does kind of pick up on this shadow here, and it accents some of the colors in the background and in the foliage and grasses. Not a bad choice. Wouldn't be my first choice, but you might, it might be something that would work for you. Or if you were taking into consideration the colors in the room that it's going into, the space that it's going to be in, and maybe you had some greens in that room, this may not be a bad option to go with. This is just an example of what not to do. As you can see, when you look at this, you quickly notice the teal color, and it really takes away from the artwork. So let's move on to the top mat. So any of these options would be a decent single mat for this piece. You could get away with just having the one layer, but you're gonna notice now when I add a top mat, it's gonna just enhance the piece a little more, give it a little more depth, and bring out some of the nice light on the bison's face and along his back, and also the light that you see in this nice fall foliage of the tree here. A lot of artists like to just use a white or a cream. I would say it's not a bad idea. I find it to be a little bright. It kind of detracts from the artwork a little bit. But if you're exhibiting it in an exhibit and you want to have all your pieces uniform, a white or a cream isn't a bad choice, as all of your pieces could be framed the same way and they would look okay. That's a darker cream. You can see this starts to bring out some of the light here on the bison along his back, as well as some of the light that's bouncing off of the leaves. And it works well with the grasses. So I'm gonna switch up the bottom mat here. You can see right now we still have this bay leaf mat. So this is kind of the fun part. You can play around with colors, try different colors, different color combinations until you land on the combination that excites you, really makes your piece stand out the way you want it to. It makes it something special. In this case, I'm not crazy about the green. It's not bad, but it wouldn't be my first choice. As you can see here, this nice warm brown paired with this nice creamy white, more of a cream, I guess. It really accents the bison nicely. It brings out the light on his back and on his face. The red really brings out the shadows and kind of warms the piece up and makes it nice and inviting. This would be something that I would be happy with if it were hanging on my wall. And then this cool brown, you can see it really brings out the shadows in the grass, brings out some of the tree branches, brings out the shadow here on the bison. It kind of cools down the matting a little and allows the warmth of the picture to kind of come out on its own. So I'm gonna try another top mat. This one you'll notice is slightly different. This first choice that I had down there has a little more yellow in it. This one has a little more red. I really like how this mat highlights the colors on the bison's back and on his face here, the highlight that's kind of running down the side of his face. I also think that this one works really well with the warm yellows that are in the tree, and it contrasts nicely against the soft grass tones. This would be my choice, but you can't go wrong with many of the other choices that we've looked at. This really accents the light and the warmth that's in the piece, allowing the print to really take on a personality of its own. Now, we weren't going to get into this, but just because I've come this far, why don't we look at a frame as well? That's a nice choice there. Another thing to consider when choosing your mats is sometimes it isn't a bad idea, if you're doing a double mat, to have the bottom mat kind of play off of the frame that you're choosing. Or if you're selecting the matting first, choose a frame that plays nicely with the bottom mat. It kind of ties it all together. So remember, when you're selecting your mat, one of the first things you want to think about is conservation and preservation. You want to make sure that you are choosing the best mats for your print that are going to protect it for a lifetime and more. The next thing you want to think about is color. You want to make sure that the colors you choose really highlight the things in the picture that kind of drew you to this piece. Whether that was the light, or maybe some of the shadows, or maybe it was just the bison. We selected this nice warm cream with a warm brown on the bottom, and that paired nicely with this warm walnut stained frame. Hop on over to our Etsy store at DanTheFrameMan.etsy.com. We're constantly trying to add new products weekly. If you have any questions about choosing your mats or anything else to do with framing, post it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for watching. Consider subscribing, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers.